It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. I'm with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews. This show where I brew a version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us in my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. I'd also really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links in the description. I'd appreciate it. As we're running through this last week of Innistrad content celebrating Innistrad Remastered, I wanted to do a Spirit Commander. I talked about Millicent back on Halloween, and thought it was too early to kind of go back and do her again. But what I thought would be interesting was take a look at a commander that, back when Crimson Vow originally came out, I thought about making Spirit Tribal 4. The issue for me was that I always had just looked at Kykar a little bit differently, but I think Kykar actually was a really good Spirits commander. Kykar Winds Fury is a Jeskai 3/3. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get to make a Spirit creature with flying. We sack spirits to add red mana. Kykar is normally played as a Storm commander or an Artifacts commander. There's a lot of other ways to take a look at Kykar, but what I thought would be interesting for Spirits is because you're making Spirits for playing a lot of the things that help support Spirits anyway, kind of a nice platform for this Spirit Tribal deck. We're going to play a few, regular creature spirits, but the truth is a lot of our things are going to be non-creature spells, so we can make the spirits, buff them up, and have them hit harder in the sky. So like I said, we are going to play a few things that care about spirits, because it is the main goal of the deck. So you have things like Drog Skull Captain, give them all +1/+1 and hexproof. Reinforcements gives them all melee, and prevents all non-combat damage to be dealt to our spirits. Hope for Ghostforge is going to give them trample and haste, which is pretty cool. And then it tacks on whenever another non-token creature we control dies, exile it. If we do, we make a copy of it, except it's a spirit. And whenever that creature leaves the battlefield, you return the exile card back to your graveyard. So, interesting way to get another copy of it. I'd really thought about making Hofri as a Spirits commander, because it was kind of that thing in Strixhaven. I just couldn't get the list to work, and I thought, well, I know I can make Kykar work. Kira's going to protect all of our creatures, giving them the ability to counter the first thing that targets them each turn. Of course, we're playing the other Kykar from Foundations because it also makes Spirit tokens, but can also blink creatures, which isn't a bad ability depending on other creatures that are in our deck. There's Millicent that we talked about a few months ago. Whenever it or another non-token spirit die or hit a player, we make a spirit. So again, just more spirits, and again, flood the board with those spirits in the air and use our things to buff them to make them a threat. Patrician Geist is going to buff them. Supreme Phantom's going to buff them. And Shackle Geist allows us to tap spirits to tap down creatures. This is really useful because we're probably going to have a lot of spirits laying around. So when our opponent's going to move into combat, we can tap their things down, prevent those combats, and make sure that we're staying ahead. Or we can use the new spirits we make each turn with Kykar to maybe tap down flying blockers, right, to make sure we really get into damage. But the truth is, the non-creature spells are where our deck really shines. And there's a lot of ways with Kykar that you can take advantage of non-creature spells. What I try to do here is just to give you an overview of some of the things you can do with Kykar, some of the things that are in the deck. And if you're going to do this, you can push towards one or the other, whatever you want to do. Polymorph and Transmogrify are both abilities that are going to take a creature and either kill it or destroy it or exile it. And you reveal from the top until you hit another creature and put it on the battlefield. This is great to turn your 1/1 token spirit into a creature from your deck, which is very beneficial. And the nice part is, you'll get a spirit for doing it. Now, you can't obviously target the spirit you get from Kykar by casting it, but the nice thing is you get to replace that and potentially, right, get one of our other key spirits on the deck. Kindred Charge is a potential finisher. You're going to choose a creature type, and for each creature that type, you make a copy of it. So we pick Spirit, we're going to get a bunch of new spirits, but they're going to get haste, right? And then they can attack and make a big swing in the air at our opponents. Jeskai Charm is a spell I've always liked, especially when you're going wide. You can give your creatures +1/+1 and lifelink until end of turn. Potentially just a huge life swing as we have our flyers getting in. Arcane Signet's odd to show here, but it just represents the fact that all mana rocks are going to trigger Kykar. So as you're going up the curve, playing your talismans and your signets, as long as Kykar's out, you're getting spirits for it and you're ramping. By Nefasa, things like it can draw you cards whenever creatures hit a player in combat. That's great, right? Because you're going to have a ton of flyers in the air that some people just aren't going to be able to block. Same thing with something like Out of Oblivion. You're going to be making a spirit at minimum every turn, meaning we should be able to draw with them. Before we get some of our buffs out, that means we can use things like Skull Clamp to clamp our spirits and draw cards, churn through our deck, getting access to more of our things. A card I love for token style decks or go wide style decks, and I've seen win me the game multiple times, is Strixhaven Stadium. It's a card that says whenever you tap it, you put a point counter on it. Whenever a creature we control deals damage to an opponent, we get to put a point counter on it. And then if it has 10 or more point counters on it, you remove them all, and that player loses the game. The big thing to note with Strixhaven Stadium, and what actually caused me to win a game in a game where I had way too many tokens, is that the trigger ability says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, which means that you will put as many triggers of that in the stack as you had creatures that hit. And in the game that I won with it, just to be frank, I had 12 or 13 creatures that each hit each of my opponents, meaning that I was going to put 10 on, then remove them, go to put 10 on, and then remove them, and actually everybody just lost the game to the Strixhaven Stadium triggers. That's not going to happen as often, but what's important to note is that you may only need 6 or 7 spirits by the time you tap Strixhaven Stadium a couple times. Now, you lose them when somebody hits you, but you're going to have more than enough spirits, I think, to chump block most of the time. But this is a threat your opponents have to deal with, considering they're small and they're in the air. Caretaker's Talent, of course, card draw right, and a buff to the spirits as we get it leveled up. Haunted Library is such an interesting card for spirits. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we could pay one. If we do, we make a spirit, so that's nice. Being able to kind of turn our spare mana if we run out of spells or things like that, maybe into more spirits. And then Jeskai Ascendancy, giving pseudo prowess. Whenever we cast a non-creature spell, all of our creatures get +1/+1, but they untap. This is important if you're playing anything with Convoke or you want to work into that a little bit more. And then whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we can draw a card, and if we do, pitch card. This is nice if we get flooded out with lands in our hand and things like that. We can just start churning through our deck to get access to more spells. Murmuration may look odd because it makes bird tokens, but the point is you're making more flyers in the air that are just going to be enough for your opponents to deal with. War Leader's Call gives the buff and then has that impact tremor style ability, dealing with damage to each opponent whenever one of our spirits come in. And then Whirlwind Thought, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. Again, some of these cards and these ideas are interchangeable. The point is, these are the kind of things you want. Damage when creatures come in, drawing cards, getting access to more things. You can kind of see, as we work our way up the curve, we're drawing, we're getting value, and that's what's important. We then take that and edify it with buffing our spirits. Things like Patchwork Banner, which just give them a flat +1/+1. Banner of Kinship, which can come in and take a snapshot of the battlefield and give our creatures +1/+1 for every one of that type that was on the battlefield at that time. So if we have 5 spirits, the banner comes in, gets 5 counters on it, and then for the rest of the game, all of our spirits are getting +5/+5. And that's great, right? Because the more spirits we have, the better that becomes. Cathar's Crusade works so well in this deck that you're probably going to make multiple spirits per turn. You're just spreading those counters all over the place, making them real threats. City on Fire, we can actually convoke it out, meaning that we don't have to sacrifice those spirits for red mana, hopefully, to cast it. But then whenever we would deal damage to a permanent or player, triple that damage. So if we have 2/2s, right, they're effectively 6/6s, and you could start to see where that really, or 6/2s, but you could start to see where that really helps us. Favorable Winds, buff for creatures in the air. Inspiring Leader gives a buff whenever Kykar and it are out at the same time. You could start to see where these are going to start to stack and buff our creatures. Intangible Virtue, +1/+1 in Vigilance, Rally the Rank, straight +1/+1 to our spirits. Shared Animosity, whenever a creature we control attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each attacking creature that shares a type with it. So we have 5 spirits attacking, you're getting +4/+0, and you can start to see where these buffs are going to stack up and really help us push that mid-game and hurt our opponents in the air. I also like things like Shared Animosity because it's going to help our spirits fight above their weight class when we're attacking. If we're playing into decks like Dragons or Angels, maybe we can go toe-to-toe with them just because we're going to go wider than them, and we may even be just as tall as them, depending on what we have access to. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my first time doing Kykar up the Spirit vein on the channel. I think there's a lot of really good in the deck, but the truth is, in testing, you want to find that consistency. Do we need more card draw? We do have a lot in the deck. But the Indomitable and Kindred Discovery both just represent ways you can draw more cards. Indomitable is another copy of Binding of Thassa, but it's a vehicle that you can crew to deal damage. And then Kindred Discovery draws a card every time a spirit comes in or attacks. A great way to draw a ton of cards, right? So these are just options. I think Kindred Discovery of these three is the one I would bring back in right away. It's just tough, right? Sometimes you need to test to see how your ratios are and where things are at. Ral, I just think makes a ton of sense. It's a great planeswalker. We don't really care about the otters, but the truth is, draw 3, discard 2 is great, especially when you hit a certain land count. You really don't need more lands. And then if you can ultimate him to draw 3 and just give all your instant sorceries storm, that's just profit, right? But what I think is interesting about Ral specifically is that the card draw is just nice, and the otters do more damage than you think they will over the course of a couple turns. But the point is, he's just there for the potential card draw. So the answer to me in testing is card draw. Do we need more of it? How do we accomplish more of it? What does it look like for us? There's plenty of draw spells in the deck, but the question is, do we need to edify it with other abilities? But let's get into our play test. Let's see how Kykar is running. Keep it a 3-lander with Soul Ring, Skull Clamp, Patrician Geist, and War Leader's Call. Not a bad start. You could argue about getting Soul Ring down turn 1. You could argue about getting the Triome down turn 1. I mean, if I get a Darkar Waste in turn 1, I could get Patrician Geist down turn 2, right? Work my way into a Kykar on turn 3 here. Right, so turn 2, put the Triome in, get the Geist in, right? And then my thought is now, we get to basically just turn 4 Kykar and a Skull Clamp, because we have that one floating left over, which is going to get us the Spirit. And now we're off to a great start. Right? We could sack that Spirit for a red, but we really don't need to, because it's got a little buff, and we're in good shape. The good thing, of course, to note is that Kykar is not a Spirit for the purpose of other abilities. Here's one of our ways in the deck we could start damaging our opponents. Purphoros deals 2 damage each opponent anytime a creature comes in. So we are playing some of these, like War Leader's Call there in our hand as well, that are going to deal damage right to our opponents as our things come in. 4 mana this turn, although we could put this Talisman down with the Soul Ring, get another Spirit, and we're still at 4 mana, right? Unfortunately, Purphoros, when we cast it, even though it'll come down as an enchantment, it's still going to be a creature on the stack. So we won't draw from it, but I think it's one of those things that's going to really help us on future turns. Alternatively, we could play War Leader's Call. The only problem now is the Skull Clamp can't get those because of the Geist, right? So we're kind of, unfortunately, with the Geist out of Skull Clamp range. So I think there's options. Like, I like the idea of Purphoros here, and then next turn, right, play a couple things and get some damage off. So I think that's probably what I would do. Make some attacks this turn in the air. You got 2/2s, and we're working our way up. Here on turn 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 mana. So we can play a bunch of these things. The nice part about Distant Melody specifically is we would get a Spirit before it resolves, meaning if we casted it right now, we draw 4 cards, which is pretty nice, and get some damage off. My thought is that plus War Leader's Call. So War Leader's Call, make a Spirit, 3 damage. The Spirit happens on cast, so just 2 damage. Then cast the Distant Melody, make a Spirit, 3 damage, right? And then we're going to draw 5, right, off the Distant Melody. Load up our hand for next turn, right? Prefer still not a creature, which is a-okay. I mean, it really doesn't matter at this point. We really want it just for these abilities, right? Now these are 3/3s in the air, right, because of the War Leader's Call. So they could still be attacking well. And as we get into the next turn, now you're looking at Patchwork Banner for another buff, right? And then another Spirit that can deal some damage, right? We're looking to be in pretty decent shape. So Banner plus the Haunted Library would be 5 mana. But of course, we can use colorless for the Banner, but I think I would start with the Banner, make a Spirit, 3 damage, right? And then play the Haunted Library, make a Spirit, 3 damage, right? Now these are 4/4s, right? Because of the Geist and the War Leader's Call and the Banner. We can hold the Generous Gift up for some removal. And now, again, just keep attacking, right? If our opponent's creatures die, we can pay into the Haunted Library to make some Spirits, right? But I think I would just be attacking. I guess there's an argument if we had mana left over to try to put the Skull Clamp on Kykar, that way if somebody tries to remove it, we can draw cards off of it. But the truth is, I think now the only issue is just trying to draw more cards. This is where we get in this awkward turn where we've played a lot of our stuff. We just don't have anything on board that can draw us cards. and we have a couple dead lands in our hand, like now would be the perfect time for a a discard draw outlet. Although Roar of Resistance is going to help a ton. So whenever we attack with one or more creatures, we can pay 1 in a red, and if we do, creatures attacking your opponents and or planeswalkers they control get +2/+0. So for 2 mana to put it down, right, get a spirit, and then pay 2 this turn to give them all the buff, and now we're hitting even harder and harder. I think, again, the only issue here is no card draw because we just grew outside of that Skull Clamp range. I guess we could have saved the Geist, played the Skull Clamp instead, and maybe clamped 1 or 2 more times, got us through, right, a little bit more of our deck. So maybe that's our mistake in doing this, as we see why maybe the Geist wasn't the choice right away, and maybe we should have gone for the Clamp first. Playtest number 2, another Sol Ring, another Haunted Library, huh? 3-lander with the Azorius Signet, Sol Ring, and a Banner of Kinship and a Haunted Library. So we got a lot we can do turn 1. We could go boom, boom, boom. We're just a red source away from Kykar, right? So I think turn 2, no matter what, we can't play Kykar, right? Because the Azorius Signet's not going to give us red. So if I do this, I don't think it actually nets me any good. I think we just play the Monastery. And I don't know if I even want to put the library down. I kind of want to just get Kykar up first to get the token from it. This is kind of the awkward thing, right, on these first few turns where you're trying to get your things down. Because here, I could put the 1 from the Sol Ring into that to be able to get the Haunted Library down to get that spirit, right? And now we're starting our board up. Same thing with that Banner Kinship, right? Like, we really don't want to play it until we have multiple spirits, because then the buff's not going to be that good. So, you play the Animosity. We could hold up the Boros Charm, take an attack if we want to, but the truth is kind of a piddly attack. Nice, it would be nice to get, 1 or 2 spirits off of Haunted Library maybe, but again, just stall. Now, for the record, if I had played the Banner, it would have been 3, right? Because Kykar is going to make a spirit on him when it comes in. But the truth is you just want to wait a little bit later so we can get access to it. Now, this is perfect, right? The Skull Clamp's perfect here because we're going to get another one. I can clamp the one that just came in to draw 2, right? And if I had another non-creature spell, then I could have played it and clamped. But I guess I could Boros Charm, to make another one and try to clamp again. We could just clamp another one. We would get a little bit further away from Banner, but the truth is we're churning through more of our deck. I mean, do we expect to draw 2 more lands? But I think I would try it. And of course we draw 2 more lands. But now, we have the mana up to cast the Boros Charm. We have some countersplay now, so maybe during our opponent's turns we can get the counter off and get a spirit, right? Working our way back towards our turn. Of course, another land. Yeah, I think you just have to clamp here to keep drawing, right? And there we go. Now that's perfect because now we can, do things like the Ascendancy and the Inspiring Leaders start buffing our spirits. Unfortunately, now they're out of clamp range, but I think it's okay because now we really threaten this Banner next turn when they're already up +2/+2. And then now, right, with Shared Animosity plus this plus the Banner, I think we're just going to be in great shape. But I think that's a good place to stop for that one. Would have loved for better draws off the Skull Clamp, right? It's such a great outlet for draws. Unfortunately, we just didn't see it. Maybe we end up getting more off the Haunted Library, but we just can't simulate that game. But that's not something you can really simulate all too well in your playtest, right? Here, keep it a 3-lander with the Supreme Phantom, Pheromones, Transmogrify, and Jeskai Ascendancy. We have all 3 of our colors. We're just missing that 4th mana for Kykar. And there it is. At the moment, this Snarl's going to come in tap no matter what. So I think we have to do that. Turn 2, I think we get the Talisman down, right? I'm thinking turn 3, do we just Kykar? That would lead to land, Favorable Winds, and Animosity is my thought. Land, Shared Animosity, Favorable Winds is my thought this turn. Get double spirits, right? Move into your next turn. Banner's not bad. It's not great. We would like a couple more spirits out, right? But it's not bad. We've still got 5 mana. I mean, we could go Ascendancy plus Phantom. We could try to Transmogrify one of our spirits and see what we get into. There's a lot of options. I love the idea of leaving up the Dawn's Truce just in case. So maybe the answer is like just Jeskai Ascendancy to make another spirit. They could still attack, right? Turning into 3/1s. These would turn into 2/1s with the animosity if we have the attacks. But otherwise, wait. Just hold up the Dawn's Truce. We'll just wait and see if we. Sorry, they're 2/2s. They would become 3/2s with shared animosity. But maybe we wait the turn to see if we can get some more value again. If something we need to protect, we will use the Dawn's Truce, right? Get another spirit. And now going forward, right, they get the buff off that Ascendancy. So now the nice part is if I play the banner, they're going to get +1/+1 this turn, and then the banner is going to come in and give them 4, right? So they'd be up 5/5 this turn. They're going to get up to favorable wins. They'd be a 6/6s, and then the animosity, which, right, honestly might not be too bad right now to be a big threat. I think what I would probably do is use the Ascendancy's bottom ability and just draw apart and pitch, just try to work our way into some more things. I like the idea of the removal now, something we can use on our opponent's turns, right? But big attack this turn, and then if the board's still down our turn, ooh, we drew into a draw spell. Go, Faithless Looting, make another spirit, +1/+1 on a turn. We could, draw and sack if we want to, but otherwise just draw 2. Pitch 2. Kira's great. Supreme Phantom's great. Probably keep the Kira over the Supreme Phantom, play the Kira just to better protect the board, and now, take your attacks at a bigger buff. I think you can kind of see that the mid-game of Kykar is going to basically always be the same. Get the buffs in, work the damage towards your opponents, but the nice part here is we can care more about spirits with some of our support cards and play the spirits, right? The real spirits to back them up. Let me know, what do you think of Kykar down in the comment section below? I like this deck. I think it's probably what I would have wanted back then. We just got things like the new Kykar from Foundations to help make spirit tokens a little bit easier. And I think we got some great protection spells, in Dawn's Truce and Flare of Fortitude more recently to really help the deck as well. But let me know what you think, and I will catch you all in the next one.